Most of us think of worms as the writhing little creatures in our gardens. Nothing but vulnerable, slimy little guys. But the reality is more complicated than that. While there are over 20,000 known species of earthworms alone, it is estimated the total number of worm species range from several hundred thousands to millions. From the one that can turn snails into zombies to the one that can cause you excruciating pain, stay with us as we are looking at 10 of the freakiest worms in the world. At over 10 feet long, bobbit worms are about the closest thing we have to the ones we see in sci-fi movies. They have toxic bristles up and down their body that can cause permanent nerve damage to anyone who touches them, and they feed by grabbing their prey with massive, strong jaws and sucking it down into the sand. They are ambush predators that wait in shallow waters with only about 1/10 of their body poking out of the sand, and their mouths stretched completely open. As soon as one of their antennae detects something in the water, they lunge for it, even if it's significantly bigger than they are. As a matter of fact, their strikes are so powerful that sometimes they just accidentally cut fish in half just by trying to grab them. Found across most of Europe as well as in Asia, a horse leech does not have the ability to pierce through mammalian skin, but it does possess many teeth that sit back in their mouth parts. Living in shallow parts of ponds or ditches, early spring is this worm's favorite time of the year. As the toadlets would emerge from the water to spend their adult lives in the woods, the leech would take this opportunity to wait along the banks. The leech would use its 5 pair of eyes and keen sense of smell to prey on these toadlets. Any unfortunate toadlets that aren't quick enough will be caught by the leech and devoured whole. With 3 sets of teeth at the back of its mouth, no toadlets can escape from this deadly grasp. An amber snail is usually considered by many as a typical garden snail. But when it is infected by a parasitic worm called green-banded broodsac, it transforms into a real-life zombie. This happens when the snail accidentally eats the eggs of the green-banded broodsac, usually from bird droppings where these eggs hatch and become larvae inside the snail. But from here, the flatworm juveniles would make their way to the eye stalks for something sinister. At this point, the snail is completely blind and loses its natural fear of sunlight. When sunlight hits the colorful broodsacs in the eye stalks, they begin to twitch and pulsate to attract birds' attention. Then, if a bird eats these eye stalks thinking they are caterpillars, these worms would make their way to the bird intestine to transform into adults and lay eggs that eventually make their way into the bird droppings. The midnight zone in the ocean is a world of total darkness, where predators lurk in the shadows, ready to pounce on prey. And the small bomber worm is nothing but one of those preys that swims in the waters a few meters above the sea floor. Even though this wriggly worm is exposed out in the open, it actually has a secret weapon to avoid becoming a meal for a hungry predator. In fact, a bomber worm has 8 sacs of bioluminescent fluid just behind its head. And when disturbed, it releases this bomb that bursts with a green glow. While this light show distracts the predator, the little worm makes a quick escape and paddles to safety. Once safe from harm, this fascinating worm then regenerates its lost bombs to get ready and prepared to face the next threat. At first glance, these flashing lights may look like stars in the dark sky, but they are actually glowworms. However, despite the name, they are not real worms, but the larvae of a fungus gnat species endemic to New Zealand. Residing in dark and damp places like caves, a glowworm would spin a nest out of silk on the ceiling of the cave and hangs down up to 30 silk threads, along which it regularly places small, sticky droplets. Using chemicals in their abdomen to produce light, a colony of these worms would transform the dark cave into a natural planetarium. Any unsuspecting small invertebrates who think that they are under the sky might get disoriented by these fake stars, causing them to fly straight into the lights, eventually getting caught in the sticky threads. This is when the worm reels in its catch by ingesting the thread and starts feeding on the prey alive. Native to tropical and subtropical regions, a hammerhead worm is the embodiment of all your fears combined together. When hunting for food, a hammerhead worm would push its prey against a surface and entangles it in its slimy secretions. Once the prey has become entangled, it would secrete a very potent toxin called tetrodotoxin, which is the same toxin that's found in the pufferfish to paralyze the muscles of its prey. Then it extends its pharynx from the body and secretes digestive enzymes to suck the liquefied tissue into its branched gut with its cilia. While these worms don't pose a direct threat to human beings, they're an invasive species that packs the power to eradicate earthworms, something that can cause a major concern for the farmers all over the world. If there is no earthworms and other helpful soil fauna, there is nothing left to aerate and fertilize the soil. Living in shallow marine waters, Gorgan worm is a proboscis worm that relies on the ocean's water pressure to keep its body in one piece. In fact, if you pick up one of these worms, its fragile body simply falls apart. For a long time, zoologists were unclear how precisely these worms fed. The branched proboscis was hypothesized to sift through sediment like sea cucumbers. Alternatively, the proboscis was also thought to function by filtering zooplankton out of the water. But both were wrong, as it is now accepted that the branched proboscis is shot out like a sticky harpoon to snare its prey, such as mollusks and other worms. It is then reeled in, dragging the prey back to the mouth where it gets swallowed whole. Living in all tropical habitats and in the temperate zone of the southern hemisphere, velvet worms are probably the cutest worm on this planet. But they're also ferocious ambush predators. They would emerge at night to hunt and slowly patrol their environment to look for food. Under the dark night sky, their sensitive antennae and skin help them to detect their quarry, such as an arthropod. Upon finding an unsuspecting target, a velvet worm would release its secret weapon. Just behind its head, there is a pair of highly modified limbs, which act like glue turrets. While pointing at the prey, they are able to release a slimy jet to trap the prey. If once is not enough, it will do this a few times to make sure the prey is completely entangled and cannot escape. Then, the worm bites off parts of the prey and sucks them up after they have been softened by digestive saliva extruded from the worm's mouth. Found in damp areas all over the world, horsehair worms are scary-looking slender worms that are completely harmless to humans, but the same cannot be said to insects. As a matter of fact, when immature, they are parasites of insects, arthropods, and other invertebrate animals. It is not clear how immature horsehair worms infect hosts, but when they do, these worms would feed on the host from the inside. And about 3 months after a horsehair worm parasitizes a host, the host is impelled to seek out water. As the host enters the water, the mature worm would emerge, usually killing the host. But again, this is why these worms are considered beneficial to humans, because they control the population of insects. Native to West Africa, Lowa is a translucent worm that starts off as eggs given to human by a bite from either a mango fly or a deer fly. When these eggs hatch, the worms would follow the bloodstream to find food. They only move during the day because flies only come out during the daytime, meaning if a fly bit an infected person, the worm would have the opportunity to allow the fly to swallow its eggs and propagate the species, and at night time they would rest in the lungs. While this would already hurt enough as it is, the Lowa can also move inside the thin skin of the eye and cause utter agony.